You know, folks, that is one of the greatest theme songs in the history of TV. This show, Hill Street Blues, which I'm referring to, lasted for 7 seasons on NBC. And the gentleman joining us today was on 6 of those 7 seasons. But more importantly than that, before he made his way into acting, he was a phenomenal football player. He's a 3-time All-American in football. He was the first person in the Ivy League to finish runner-up for the Heisman. He went on to have a nice NFL career, appearing in 2 Super Bowls. It is my privilege to introduce to you the one and only Ed Marinaro. And Ed, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Well, nice to be here, Mike. Appreciate it.
So, Ed, if I'm not mistaken, you went to high school in New Milford, correct?
New Milford, New Jersey. Yep.
Right. So just how did the love for football begin for you, or sports in general?
Well, basically, I was good at everything. So, you kind of go to course of least resistance. I was, I guess, just like anybody, you kind of discover that you have this ability. And, I was good, not to sound like an egomaniac, but, I was really good in baseball. I was good in basketball. I was good in football. And, that's sort of what motivates you to keep doing it. And I got better as time went on, which that's not always the case. A lot of people, they kind of max out at a young age. But, I just kept getting better and rising to the occasion. The next level I went to from, high school to college and college to pro. So it's pretty much human nature. When people pay attention to you because you're a good athlete, it sort of motivates you.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking about this, Ed. When you grew up as a young kid, think about some of the sports teams, how successful they were in that area. Obviously, the Yankees were having their big run in the late 50s, or actually early 50s, to be honest, and they kept it going in the late 50s. Then they had a couple championships in the early 60s. And then, we'll get to the Jets and when you played for the Jets, but the Jets also won that 3rd Super Bowl, which was huge for the AFL because it really made them a force and a big player because they had always kind of been like the stepbrother to the NFL. So that was huge for them. So you got to see a lot of great sports moments as a young kid.
Yeah, well, growing up in New Jersey, I was a giant Yankee fan, and then that next generation became Mets fans.
Right.
But I grew up being a huge New York Yankee fan. I got to meet some of my childhood heroes. I actually met Mickey Mantle. I became friends with Roger Maris, Whitey Ford, Yogi Berra. This is when they were, done playing, and I was sort of starting in my career, but I was lucky enough to meet them, and that was a great thrill. Yeah, and that area is a great sports, that tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, great sports teams, great sports tradition. I was one of the great thrills I had was getting to play in Yankee Stadium. I played the year. They did a renovation for a few years, and the Giants played in at the Yale Bowl. And when I was playing with the Vikings, we played the Giants in the Yale Bowl. But then when I signed with the Jets, I played the first football game that was played in the new Yankee Stadium. The Jets played the Giants. It was an exhibition game, and that was kind of a thrill, something you look back on and. It was pretty cool, especially for a guy who, I belonged to the Maris Mantle fan club when I was in 6th grade, and we put a nickel in every week for dues, and then at the end of the year we'd go see a Yankee game, and one of the parents would take us. We'd sit out in the grandstands in Yankee Stadium and watch the Yankees. So to be able to be on that field and be playing as a professional, it was a thrill.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Mantle and Maris because anybody I've ever talked to that got to see the Yankees in the '60s, they've always told me that Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle were their favorite players. Now, we've always heard for years how the fans were very rough on Maris during that '61 season. You were around then. You got to, kind of watch the Yankees on an everyday basis. Was it a little blown out of proportion, or were the fans very brutal to him?
I don't remember them. I mean, I remember them really kind of rooting for him when he was on pace to break the home run record. I think that was really exciting.
Yeah.
There was maybe there was a little bit of competition because Mickey was there, from the beginning. He was a original Yankee, and Roger, I think, came from Kansas City, I believe. So, I mean, I think there was probably a little bit of, within the team, within the fan base, more people rooting for Mickey to break the record than Roger. But Roger was just a great guy. I did get to know him. We would talk on the phone when, this is well after he retired, but he was just a wonderful guy. He had a beer distributorship down in Florida. And, yeah, he was just a good guy. I didn't really know Mickey that well, but I did get to meet him. I actually met him at the golf course in Dallas, Texas. So that was a thrill.
Yeah, and I mean, we all have the players we grow up watching. For me, it was Mattingly when I was a young kid, and I love Mattingly. But I always am a little jealous that I never did get to see Mantle, Maris, Yogi Berra, Whitey Ford, those type of guys. Because, I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, all I ever heard about from my father when I was a kid is all those Yankee teams. And I mean, fortunately in the '90s, I was able to see some great Yankees teams, but I do get a little jealous, like I said, that I didn't get to see that era because it seems like it was just the best time to be a Yankees fan back then.
Well, what made it special was these guys stayed with the team for most of their career. I mean, it's not like today where, in all sports, they're jumping from team to team to team. No, everybody stayed. Yogi was a Yankee his whole career. Whitey was a Yankee his whole career. So you really developed a very loyal fan base because all the players, it just appeared that, they probably would have done the same thing. They would have gone where the money was if they could have, but nobody did that. They just, it was the same thing with football before free agency. You were, fans got to kind of just embrace players because they were going to be there till their careers were over.
Right, exactly. So let me ask you, Ed, I know up in Connecticut here, Pop Warner really didn't start in some parts of Connecticut till like 1966, 67. Was there Pop Warner when you were a kid? Were you able to play football as a young kid?
In my little town of New Milford, New Jersey, we started, it was called the Junior Football League. It wasn't Pop Warner. It was called the Junior Football League. And it started when I was 12 years old. So I played 12 and 13. And then I went into junior high school. I played freshman football when I was 14 and 15. But I played 2 years of junior football.
Right. Now, were you a running back right away, or did you have like different positions they tried you at before you set in as a running back?
I actually was a quarterback.
Quarterback, okay.
Played quarterback right up until my freshman year in high school, and I injured my passing shoulder. I'm playing defense, and I was a pitcher in baseball and a quarterback, and I couldn't throw the ball anymore. So I moved to running back as a sophomore in high school.
Wow.
Yeah. So actually, they put me. The first game I played in high school, varsity football, I played flanker, and I caught 2 touchdown passes. But then they put me at running back. I don't remember why they put me at running back, but I ended up. That was my position. That was fun. I did pretty well in high school. I did well enough in high school to get, I probably had 30 or 40 football scholarships.
Wow.
To play college football from some really big schools, Penn State, Duke, Wake Forest. Rutgers, which is New Jersey. Yeah, but I was, I mean, I didn't fit the description of a running back. A 6 foot
Yeah.
2.5, about 200 pounds, and but I got it done my own way.
Right. Now, was New Milford Knights a big football program? I mean, was it popular in New Jersey, or give us a little background on that?
There where I grew up in Bergen County, I think Bergen County there were more towns in Bergen County than any place in the country. I think there were 65 towns in Bergen County, and there were different leagues in Bergen County. There were the Catholic school leagues. It was pretty. Bergen County, New Jersey in general, has put out some really, really good football players. I mean, you go back to my era. You had Franco Harris, Lydell Mitchell, Joe Theismann, um, Phil Villapiano, Jack Tatum. I played against Jack Tatum in high school. New Milford, because it's such a densely populated state. And a lot of people moved to New Jersey. Native New Yorkers, like my parents were native New Yorkers, and they moved out of New York City so they could raise their kids, in the country. And New Jersey was considered country back then. It wasn't the streets of Manhattan. So they drew a lot of really good athletes, a lot of good basketball players. So yeah, it was pretty competitive. I mean, but everybody was in their own league. I think there were the league I was in, there were maybe 8 teams, and there was no real playoffs or anything. You just tried to win the conference, and so that was a long time ago. It's hard to even remember.
Yeah, right. But now you mentioned you played baseball as well. When you hurt your hand, did you still continue to play baseball? You just obviously couldn't pitch anymore, but did you still play baseball, or did you strictly focus on football?
No, I sort of after my freshman year, I stopped playing baseball and I went out for the track team just to do something in the spring. And I was a shot putter, discus thrower, and my senior year I ran the high hurdles.
Wow.
Which I should have been doing from the very beginning, because I was pretty good in the high hurdles, but I only ran my senior year. That was a great race. That would have been good for me if I would have done that my whole career. Track, running and track would have been better for me as a football player. I don't know why I was throwing the shot put, or the discus. It was just, I was just okay.
And the thing is too, is a lot of kids who maybe not so now, but back, 60s, 70s, and 80s, if they played football, they would do track because they wanted to help with their speed in track. And if they were linemen, they would throw. They just wanted to stay fresh. So, I mean, a lot of times if you did football, you also did track, which nowadays, I think if you do cross country, you do track, it's a little different. And if you play football, you do lacrosse or you do baseball. But back then it was football and track.
Yeah, when I look back, I probably would have benefited from, being on a track team. I guess I didn't really, I just wanted to be the best at, whatever I did, instead of doing it as a way to make myself better in football by running track. I wanted, if I was on the track team, I wanted to be the best track guy. I mean, I wasn't thinking of it as a way to prepare for another sport. But, I think that's a really good thing. And I think they're encouraging young kids today to play more than one sport in high school. I mean, when you get to college, it's pretty hard to play more than one sport in college because, academically, especially where I went to college, it was just really demanding. We didn't have lacrosse when I was in high school, but my son's just finished his sophomore year at Cornell, and we lived down here in Charleston, South Carolina. His high school lacrosse team was state champions, and he was one of the top players on the team. And he's just a great athlete. I think I would have been a really good lacrosse player, had I, but New Jersey didn't even have lacrosse back then. So
Yeah, and lacrosse has really gotten popular. I think it was Memorial Day. They had the national title game, and I mean that was a real good game. I believe it was Notre Dame and Duke, and that was a lot of fun to watch. So I mean,
actually,
lacrosse is,
actually, I think it was Cornell, Maryland.
was it?
This,
I thought they.
this past year, I believe it was Cornell, Maryland, and Maryland was undefeated, and they won, but
Yeah.
Cornell made it to the final game. I believe so. I could be wrong, but
Right, but I mean,
Cornell has a great lacrosse tradition, and when you consider they don't give scholarships to consistently attract some of the best lacrosse players, certainly in the Northeast, which is where the hotbed of lacrosse is, I'm thinking. But it's spreading out. It's becoming more and more popular. It's a great sport. It's the only problem with lacrosse is you have to train your eye to watch lacrosse.
yeah,
It's sort of like hockey. The puck is so small, the lacrosse ball is so small. You can't tell if there's a goal until you see the back of the net,
yeah,
expand. But it's really an exciting. They're great athletes. Some of the stuff that they can do with a stick is really, really impressive. See, my son, he didn't start playing lacrosse until he got into high school, and then most of these kids who are played at Cornell, they started when they were like 8 years old. So developing that kind of stick skill, you start learning that when you're really young. So
yeah, it really is. It's become a very popular sport. So Ed, what made you decide on Cornell? Because as you mentioned earlier, you had about 40 scholarships. Was it just obviously you wanted to go to an Ivy League school? I mean, was that what it came down to?
Yeah, I mean, I came from a blue collar family, and yeah, for some reason, the prestige that went along with an Ivy League school just meant something to me, even at a very young age. I was 17, 18 years old, and I I just felt, boy, if you can get into an Ivy League college, I mean, that's something that's going to be valuable for the rest of your life,
Right.
and I had no, I never ever thought that I would achieve the things that I did in football. I mean, like I knew I was good, but I didn't know how good I was, and and just everything fell into place for me when I went to Cornell. It's very, I always tell people that to have greatness at any level in sports, you have to have two things. You have to have a lot of ability and a lot of luck. And I had both of those things when I went to Cornell. I got in a perfect situation. The offense that the Cornell actually changed to my sophomore year, I had to play freshman football.
Right. Yeah.
So my sophomore year, they changed the whole offense. The coaches went to this camp, and they installed the I formation. And before that, we ran split backfield. I was in the backs were in a 3-point stance. It was a fullback and a halfback. And then my sophomore year, I lined up like 7 yards deep. And then I would they'd flip me the ball, they'd hand me the ball. It was just it really fit my skill set. And I didn't even know what my skill set was then. But I was able to, just totally take advantage of that offense. And had they not changed the offense, I never would have gained, the yards that I did, and we probably wouldn't have been as good as a team. But yeah, I mean, I look back at my life, and going to Cornell was probably the best decision I could have ever made. I'm proud that I made it at a young age. When you're making that decision, you really don't know. I mean, my father, we had to, pay for my education. It wasn't a lot of money back then, but I turned down, 30 scholarships. I had basketball scholarships to play in
Yeah.
basketball. And, people ask me that a lot, why, I chose Cornell. And, I just, I always wanted to, I always really admired the smart kids in high school. The kids who, when we have a test, I'd get an 83 and they get a 99. And I go, oh, I was in awe of those people. They weren't the athlete I was, but I wanted to be, they were so smart.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be thought of as a smart kid. And I was lucky to get into Cornell. I had good grades. I had good college boards. I got in, I only applied to 3 colleges, Princeton, Brown, and Cornell. And I got into Cornell and Brown, and they waitlisted me at Princeton. So I just went to Cornell. I was in the hotel school at Cornell, which is a great school. And it worked out great. I have great friends, teammates, fellow hoteliers. It's just a great networking network. It's a great networking for life. And, it's special. It's different now than when I was there. It's just like everywhere, all colleges, they've kind of, especially these liberal colleges, these elite colleges, they've gotten a little bit, a little sideways compared to when I was there. They're much more, I don't want to get political, but they're, more woke than a lot of like schools like Alabama and, where they realize the importance of having a really good football team. Whereas in the Ivies, for the most part, they don't look at themselves as like that way. They want to maintain this academic integrity, and which I think is a good thing to a certain point. But, having a good sports team can only be a good thing for the university, even in the Ivy League. I think more ex-athletes donate money to the university than anybody else, any alums. So it's a good thing. And it gives you something to rally around, a student body. When I was there, we were pretty good. We were getting national attention, and it just brought the whole student body to, we used to get 20, 25,000 people coming to football games at Cornell. Now they're lucky if they get 5,000 people at a game. And, that's kind of sad, but, I think when you have a good team, we were winning, we were, I was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and, every kid at Cornell, they followed. You couldn't help but follow it. And it was just good for the morale of the university. Sports are the one thing that everybody can rally around in college. You look at Duke basketball. You can't get a ticket to a Duke basketball game. Notre Dame football. It's something that it brings the whole student body together. Kids from the arts and science, kids from the business, everybody can come together in sports. And, I think that's really important. And I think that's been lost a little bit in some schools, especially these elite kind of places like the Ivy League.
Right, exactly. And, it's hard enough to rush for 1,000 yards in one season. The fact that in a career you rushed for 4,000 yards, which you were also the first NCAA player ever to do. I'm sure back then you were a young kid. You're still just trying to maintain, your athletic career as well as your academic career. But I think probably years later you looked back and said, man, that's something to be very proud of. Did you kind of appreciate it more as you got older?
Well, I think that's just a function of getting older. You look back at things that you've done, and like I said, and I don't like to minimize the things that I've done, but I've been very lucky in my life with things, that decisions that I made that just happened to turn out good. They could have gone a different way. It happened in my pro career. my Hollywood career, there were, things that you think are bad turn out good. Things you think are going to be good turn out bad. And I was lucky. I hesitate to take a lot of, credit, like trying to make myself into, you got to do what I did, and this is how I did it. I didn't know how I did it. It sort of just happened. I mean, I was lucky. I had great teammates at Cornell, and I played in 2 Super Bowls. I got drafted by the Vikings, and the Vikings were a really good team, and that's why I played in 2 Super Bowls, because I could have gone to a crappy team and never gone to the Super Bowl. So it's life is unpredictable. I don't mean to sound philosophical, but it's I just hear a lot of people when they reflect back on their careers and their lives, they take more credit than they deserve. A lot of things just kind of just were serendipitous. They happened, and they were in the right place at the right time. Very lucky. It was a combination of things that you never even planned on. You don't plan on these things happening. I tell my son all the time. I said, Eddie, you got to just take one step at a time. Like back in my day, I mean, I never thought about pro football until I was third team All-American. My sophomore year, I was third team All-American. And that was the first time. All I thought about when I went to Cornell was making the freshman team. Then I wanted to make the varsity. Then I wanted to be a starter on the varsity. I took one step at a time. I never got ahead of myself. That's the only thing I'll give myself credit for. I mean, you got these kids going into college now, and they're thinking about pro football. I never thought about pro football. I wasn't thinking about pro football until I gained 1,400 yards my sophomore year and was third team All-American. That's when I said, you know what? I probably can get a contract as a free agent at some point when I graduate. Somebody will sign me as a free agent. That's how I was thinking. And then as it progressed, I realized I was going to be, a high draft pick but I took every step at a time, and I never got ahead of myself.
Right. So let me ask you, how special was it though, Ed, to play in the Ivy League? Because I'll tell you what, I would love watching the Ivy League games, going to, I live in Connecticut, so I'd go see a lot of Yale games. And I really enjoy those games. I mean, they're really fun. I mean, maybe they're not the Alabamas or Notre Dames, but I'll tell you, the football that's played is excellent, and the camaraderie and the tradition of the Ivy League is just, in my opinion, one of the best ever.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bubble that we play in. The Ivy League player is very unique, because of just what their priorities are. Because I'm sure, there's plenty of guys playing today in the Ivy League who could have gone to different schools, could have gone to bigger schools to play football, but they chose to go to an Ivy League school. I guess it's values, it's what's important to you, and it's at a very young age to make that decision is kind of an impressive thing, where your priorities are. There are plenty of Ivy Leaguers playing in the NFL and have played the NFL. Just recently, there's some guys playing now. We don't have what we don't have in the Ivy League is the depth that they have at these bigger colleges as far as football. I mean, there's probably on every team, there's probably 5 guys who could play at other schools, bigger schools. Okay, but that's just the way it is. We don't. First of all, you got to get into the place. You have to be smart enough to get in.
Yeah.
And that's a very admirable quality when you are smart enough and good enough. When you combine those two, like Ryan Fitzpatrick, the quarterback who played at Harvard. And he had a great career. What was interesting is there's almost like a stigma attached to you when you're an Ivy Leaguer going into professional football. they kind of don't know how to deal with you. They have a preconceived notion about who you are. You intimidate them to a certain extent. And as a player, you don't feel that way. But when I was a rookie, I remember there was so much attention paid to the fact that I was an Ivy League guy. I mean, I didn't want to be treated any different. I was a rookie and I was just trying to make the team. But they treat you in a weird way. I can't even describe it, but they kind of don't know how to approach you. They think they look at you sometimes like you have two heads, because you went to this prestigious academic institute and now you're playing in the NFL. I mean, what greater combination? That's it's pretty impressive when you think about it. That you could go to a place where the emphasis is certainly not on football, but you're good enough to graduate from one of these schools and then go on and have a career in the NFL. There aren't many guys like that. It's it's a very small fraternity. I follow these guys even to this day. We've had a few guys from Cornell go into the NFL, and it's pretty cool. It's a cool thing.
Right.
I'm not trying to flatter. Make a big deal out of it, but I've been. Again, that's one of the things in my life that I'm probably most proud of.
Right. So Ed, you made a good point when you said your goal was to make the freshman football team, then make the varsity team, then become a starter. And obviously you went way above those expectations. And to think about it, your senior year, you're a Heisman finalist. I mean, just that alone, even like I said, it's great if you win. But to me, that's more of a bonus. Just like for people to recognize your ability like that, and you're a finalist and you were the runner up. But just explain to me what that feeling was like, and being around all the other Heisman finalists, what that weekend was like for you, because that had to be an unbelievable experience.
There was no weekend.
Oh, so you guys, that didn't become
no. I was sitting in my parents' house in my den, watching the announcement by myself. So it wasn't like I went, they had us all the finalists there and they announced the whole thing. Nothing like that. I found out on television when they announced.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it was a very, very different experience than, than it is today. But that's, I played in 2 Super Bowls. There was nothing like it is today. The fanfare, the magnitude of the game, you can't even compare what it is. I mean, first of all, the winning team got $15,000. Now the losing team gets $100,000 just for playing the game. So, and that was a big deal because we weren't making a lot of money anyway. So that was like the bonus money, the playoff money for all of us was a big deal. I mean, it wasn't the only thing that motivated us, but it's certainly, when you were making $25,000 a year and all of a sudden you get a bonus of $15,000 because you won the Super Bowl. Back then, that was a big deal. And and to get back to the Heisman thing, it was, I was disappointed. And I voiced my disappointment back then. I think I know that anybody who had done what I did, I mean, I set 16 NCAA records and broke all kinds of records, would have won the Heisman Trophy. I didn't win because I went to Cornell. I was an Ivy League guy.
Right.
Okay? That's the only reason I didn't win. I mean, it makes sense. And my argument was always, I mean, they wanted to bring it back to the point that I played in the Ivy League and didn't play the competition that somebody from one of these SEC schools or Big Ten schools. But that's not what the trophy was based on. It's based on the best college football player, not who played in the best conference. It's what you do in the situation you're put in. I shouldn't have been punished because I played in the Ivy League. And I think about it, and going back to what we talked about earlier, I don't know how different my life would have been had I won the Heisman Trophy. I don't know if my life would have been as good as it was coming in second. I think winning the Heisman Trophy is obviously one of the most prestigious awards in all of sports. Okay. And you are, for the rest of your life, the Heisman Trophy winner. It overshadows almost anything you'll ever do in your life.
Right.
And it's an annuity financially. It's an annuity. You can spend the rest of your life just being an ex-Heisman Trophy winner and live a good life financially.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you make a great point too, and I don't feel like you're the only one in sports that's had that done to them, and I bet it made you look at any type of award ceremonies as political or overrated. So I'm sure, like, if you ever got nominated for an Emmy, you would look at it as, okay, this is all politics, so I'm not going to go crazy over it, because a lot of that stuff is, unfortunately, it is political. Because I mean, I look at some of the guys over the years that were outstanding actors and they never won an Emmy. I mean, how you tell me how Susan Lucci had to go 20 years before she won an Emmy. So I always think of awards as being very political.
Yeah. I mean, it's just something. It's really hard to pick the best. Sometimes it's just there's no doubt, but it is political. When it comes to acting is very subjective.
Yeah.
So but football, it's pretty clear cut. You have, if you're a quarterback, now they even do it. Like what makes a quarterback the MVP? Is it because he has great statistics, or that he leads his team to a Super Bowl? I mean, there's a combination of things that are just pretty clear cut. And I always think that statistics are for losers. I don't think statistics are a measure. They're misleading. I mean, if you're a quarterback and you're on a crappy team and you're losing by 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, they're going to give you every 15 or 20-yard completion.
Yeah.
And they'll let you get behind them for a touchdown. And they'll give every running back, they'll do a draw play and he'll run for 10 or 12 yards, because you're losing.
Yeah.
So when you gain those yards when you're fighting to win, that's when they're meaningful. So statistics don't mean anything, and they can be deceiving when it comes to, like, football. When they talk about statistics and they compare players and statistics, like they compare some of these newer quarterbacks with guys like, who played 20 years ago, like Elway or even Montana. They won. Those guys won. I don't.
Right.
You can have all the stakes you want. If you don't win it, it means nothing. So, and as far as acting goes, I mean, who can? Everybody, it's sort of like casting. Okay, if you and I are casting a role, okay, and there's a description of the role, a 40-year-old guy, kind of a very outgoing personality, blah blah blah, and they describe the character, and you and I are casting the role, and we'll see 10 actors, and you'll think one guy is perfect, and I'll think another guy is perfect.
Right.
So, nobody knows what's perfect. Sometimes the guy will turn out to be perfect. Sometimes they'll be miscast, but it's not an exact science, and that's why, if you're an actor in Hollywood, you have to kind of, understand that, you're going to get rejected more than you're going to get the roles. So you can't look at it as rejection. You just, the person who was casting it did not see you. Somebody else a different person would have cast a different way. So, it's not, and that's why it can be a little frustrating as an actor, because, you don't really have that much control. You can give the best audition in the world and not get the part. but you can't think that you're not a good actor. You just, who are these people that are making these decisions? Some of them, they don't really, they don't have any qualifications to make these decisions, but they do. So
Right.
that's what you have to get your head around if you're going to be an actor. You can't be sensitive.
Right.
You can't take these things personally. You can't say, "Oh, I'm not a good actor." No, these people, they don't know. They don't really know what they want.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, sometimes they go away from their first option, then they go back to it. Sometimes, I mean, it's crazy how it's done. But let me ask you, Ed. I know there was no weekend thing for the Heisman, but I have to believe for you and your family, you're obviously playing and your family is watching. That first time you stepped on to an NFL field and played your first NFL game, you and your family had to be very proud because you know what? It is not easy to play on Sunday. We see how hard it is. It's only the best of the best. And you were able to reach that goal and accomplish that. That had to be a great Sunday afternoon for you and your family.
You're really not thinking that way. I mean,
Right. You're probably not, but I think your family probably
well,
had to be.
I think my family just was overall proud of me. I mean, obviously, you know, they enjoyed my success, and all the things that I've done, which is understandable. But when you're 22-year-old
Yeah.
guy and you're playing, I don't know if I even played in my first game that I was dressed up in the Vikings uniform. I don't know if I even got in the game. Um, you're not thinking about it. You're asking me this question. I'm trying to recall what I felt, how I was, I mean, I was nervous.
Yeah.
I was waiting. I was prepared if I had to go in the game. You practice all week and you just, you're kind of like in the moment. You don't have a real opportunity to reflect. I mean, reflection usually comes well after it's over. And
Right.
my years in the NFL, they were exciting, but boy, they were a whirlwind. I mean, they went by so fast, and
Yeah.
I was just so, driven. I was enjoying my life. I was having fun. It was being a pro football player. It was pretty cool. Even back then, you get invited to stuff. You get invited to golf tournaments.
Yeah.
You're always the celebrity at the party, and it's action packed. And when you're young, you're not reflecting on stuff. You're staying in the moment,
Yeah.
and it isn't until you get to where you are in my life now that you even think about that stuff. You think about it, you go. Sometimes I go, wow, I can't believe
Yeah.
I did that. We're watching. My wife and I are watching this thing on eight. I don't know what it's on. Quarterback. I don't know if
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. So we finished watching it, and my wife goes, I'm watching this. She goes, I can't believe you did that. you know, and I'm watching it, and I go, I didn't do that. Yeah, that was so different now than when I played.
Yeah.
That was nothing like these guys. I mean, the calling the plays, they were. I don't know if you watched it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so much more complicated and technical, and the way these guys are. Have so much money, and they have these teams that they, psychologists that they work with, and personal trainers, and we had none of that stuff. We had none of that. We were pretty much
Right.
on our own, man. Show up for practice and then go home after practice. And I had nobody cooking for me. I was cooking for myself.
Yeah.
It's like I can't even relate to what these guys, the money that they have. I mean, making 30 million, 40 million a year. It's like it's incomprehensible. I would have had to play 1,000 seasons to make that kind of money.
One thing I wanted to ask you though, Ed, because when you played, I think you played on grass a lot more than anybody does today. I think today it's all turf, but we see so many concussions now. Do you think there's a big difference between playing on grass and turf? Do you think the turf is causing a lot of these concussions?
I think it's probably a part of it. I think the fact that these guys are just so much bigger,
Yeah.
faster, stronger, and I don't think the brain has evolved enough to withstand some of that. I mean, the equipment is a lot better than when I played. But God, I mean, these guys they train like we never trained like that. I mean,
Yeah.
we never had, if you wanted to lift weights, you pretty much did it on your own. I mean, there were a lot of guys that I played with. The biggest guy on the team when I played in Minnesota was Ed White. He was a guard, okay? He was also the NFL arm wrestling champion. Smart guy, went to Cal. He was a guard. He was 285. He was the biggest guy on our team, okay? Cornell, their offensive line is all 300 pounds. This is
Right.
Cornell. So, and they didn't have any off-season training You were on your own. I mean, I was one of the guys. I lifted weights. I trained with weights, and it really made a big difference for me. But the team didn't make you. You showed up at training camp. When I was in Minnesota, we showed up 2 weeks before our first exhibition game. 10 days.
Yeah.
10 days before our first exhibition game, we went to training camp. And they expected you to be in reasonable shape. When I was in Minnesota, we had a pretty old team. So these guys, they'd come in and, they'd use that 10 days to sort of try to get in shape. And then we played like 6 exhibition games, which were a lot of games to play. Now they play 3 or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, it's so different. I mean, it's just their approach, the science of the game is so different. I mean, it's like I don't even I can't relate on many levels to this game today. I can relate to the emotional part of the game. I can understand guys getting benched, and guys getting opportunities, and guys when they get a chance they become great. I like that aspect, that human part of the game. That I admire. I admire guys who hang in there and wait for their chance, and when they get the chance they really take advantage of it. I mean, that's kind of a cool thing. Perfect example is Tom Brady. That's one thing when I think of Tom Brady, but he played 4 or 5 years. He sat on the bench behind Drew Bledsoe. Bledsoe gets hurt, and boom.
Yeah, and the rest is history.
Yeah, you don't know how close he might have been to being and bringing in a younger guy. If Bledsoe doesn't get hurt, he keeps. You never know if he's ever going to get the chance. But when you see a guy like that, stay determined and not let. There are so many examples of that. There are probably so many great players who never got the opportunity, who had all the physical ability. And if you're one of these guys, you can never doubt your ability. Again, that's what I tell my son. No matter what happens, never doubt your ability, because it's always fluid. You're one play away from getting a chance. So don't ever doubt yourself. You might never get the chance, but when you do, you better still believe that I'm as good as anybody else. And that's just the nature of sports. You just think about all the kids who got drafted by a team, played behind somebody, never got a chance, then get cut, they're out of football. And these kids could have been great players. You never know until you get on the field and get to play.
Right. No doubt about it. And I mean, it's amazing what Brady's career has, evolved into. I mean, won 7 Super Bowls, two with 2 different teams. I mean, it's just unbelievable what he's accomplished. And, I still am not completely convinced he's done. I could see him coming back next year. You never know, but tremendous athlete and tremendous player.
Yeah, I was disappointed that he that he retired. You know, everybody tries to go out on top, but when you try to do that, you always wonder in your brain how much more I had.
Yeah.
I mean, you never, and that haunts you. It haunts you
Yeah.
because once if you're out of the league, you know, you've seen a few examples of guys who retire at the top of their career, and then a couple of years later they went back in. And you know, once you've been out of the game, you never can really, you know,
No, you can't.
you
Yeah.
can't pick up where you left off. And yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I would have loved to see Brady. I think Brady could have played another 2 or 3 years. He's just that, you know, he's a freak.
Yeah. I think of Elway too. I think Elway could have played 3 more years after he retired, but he said to himself, you know what, this is the way to go out, and I give him credit. I mean, he never tried to come back, but he could have played a few more years.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of evaluate their how they are physically, you know, and there's a lot of stuff that these guys have to deal with that you're probably not aware of, injury-wise, aches and pains, knee here and knee there, and you're wondering, do I want to risk my health?
Right.
And not that I don't have the ability, but is it worth it? You know, and some guys, but that's the one thing about, you know, sports. Once you retire, that's it.
Yeah.
You ain't coming, and it's usually at a relatively young age. You know, Brady's an exception, but you look at most quarterbacks. You know, they're done at 35.
Right.
If you look at these guys, 35 was old for a quarterback.
Yeah.
And when you take you know, believe me, I know. I mean, I only played 6 years, but you know, I have aches and pains and stuff that are directly, you know, a result of, you know, playing in the NFL for 6 years. You know, getting beat up, and back then, you know, they weren't as sophisticated as far as diagnostic. I mean, it was before MRIs and it was before arthroscopic surgery. I mean,
Yeah.
back then, if you got a knee surgery, you were done. Now you get knee surgery, you're playing in 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
Mm.
So, and my generation, you know, they when their careers were over, you know, a lot of them were in such pain that they really couldn't exercise anymore. They
Yeah.
got fat, they got diabetic, they started using painkillers, and they had bad health and they died. I mean, you see so many guys are, you know, dying in their, you know, 50s and 60s.
And they had no medical either, which was really the, you know, in my opinion, a big problem. And I know Johnny Unitas, he was never able to repair any of the damage that had been done to his knees because he had no insurance. I mean, it's sad.
Yeah, you know what that is. When you think about, you know, my generation, okay, with all the money that the NFL makes, with all the money that these guys are making, I guarantee you, you know, I have an NFL pension. You know, it's nice. You know, it's not nothing. I can't live on it, but it's nice to get those checks every month. It would be, and I'm one of the lucky ones because you know, my career in Hollywood, I made enough money where I don't have to worry about money anymore. So you know, I had a pretty good career. But there's a lot of guys. If you gave them an extra 1,000, 2,000 a month, it would mean nothing to the NFL
Oh, I
because
know.
there aren't that many guys left. You know, for between the guys who made all the money, you know, in the last 15 years or 20 years, who their pensions are like ridiculous. The fact that they don't significantly bump up, because these guys are going to die soon anyway. Give them throw them a bone. $2,000 an extra month for so many of these guys would mean so much, and
Yeah.
it would mean nothing to the NFL. It would mean nothing to these players. These players should donate, you know, $100,000 a year to the retired players.
Yeah. It's a shame. It really is.
Yeah, it is.
So Ed, how did how did acting come about? I mean, you'd retired from the NFL. Did you just decide that it was something he wanted to try. And I'll tell you what, we'll get to it in a second, but boy, what a run you had on Hill Street Blues. But how did acting all come about for you?
You know, I spent, Joe Namath is a good friend of mine to this day. You know, we still talk, and back in the day, I've known Joe since I was a senior. When I was a senior in college, I met Joe, and he invited me to work at the first year of his football camp that he had up in New England just before my rookie year in the NFL. And we hung out. He was like almost a big brother to me. And after the season was over, I'd go see him down in Florida. He had a place down in Florida. We fish and golf, and he was very generous and supportive of me. And he was doing a lot of stuff out in Hollywood, and I went out with him a couple times, and I met some people, and they were how it really kind of started was I was there, and I met a couple of people. Then when I got back to LA, somebody reached out to Joe's partner and manager, attorney Jimmy Walsh, and inquiring about me and to see if I would be willing to do a screen test to replace Lee Majors in the $6 Million Man. Do you remember that show, the $6 Million?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He was in a contract dispute, and they were going to try to probably scare him by doing screen tests for the young actors and everything. So they flew me out to LA. I met all these people. I did the screen test, and he came back to the show. But it piqued my interest. I said, "Wow, that's." I never really thought about it, but so that off season, I moved. The season after I left the Vikings and went to the Jets, that off season I moved out to LA, and I lived out there, and I got into an acting class, and I worked in an acting class for a couple of months. Then I went back to New York. That's my year with the Jets. I got an acting workshop in New York City, and then I got hurt with the Jets, so I kind of just focused on getting back on the field. And then when my career was finally over, I just said, you know what, I'd done a couple of commercials, done a couple of little roles in a movie. I just, I was single, I was only 28 years old. I said, I'm going to go out and, try to be an actor. So I moved to LA and got into it, full time. It was an interesting transition. It took me a while, but in about 2 years, I got my first big role. I did a couple of little things. Then I got Laverne and Shirley,
Yeah.
And then I did that for a half a season. And then I got Hill Street Blues. And that was probably the biggest break that somebody like me could have gotten at that point in my career, because I was probably not worthy of it. I worked with some really, really good actors. And, I was so lucky to, kind of been thrown in with them and on this great show that was almost, it was hard to screw it up. I mean, the scripts were so good. The characters are so good. The directors were so good. Everybody was just, this was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And, I auditioned for it and I got it. I got 4 episodes and then I was supposed to die.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So during these 4 episodes, they really liked the work I was doing, and they changed the ending so I didn't die, and that's when I had my run on the show. But for somebody who had as little experience that I had to get a chance to be on this show, it elevated my status in Hollywood. Because it was as everybody knows, it was the most awarded show on television, and I was part of the cast. So it gave me legitimacy that I probably didn't deserve at that point in my career. But it was certainly the biggest break that I've ever gotten or could have gotten at that point. Um, I
Yeah,
mean, it's for a whole generation. That was the show back then. It
yeah.
was so special.
And you think about this, Ed. I mean, you got to play on Sunday, as I mentioned, in the NFL, and then you're on Thursday night, which was the most watched TV. Thursday nights definitely were. I mean, you had so many great shows, and then Hill Street Blues and Knots Landing came on at 10 o'clock. So I mean, it was a must see of TV on Thursday nights. But I mean, your character, I remember, like as you mentioned, came towards the end of season one. But I mean, what a run Joe Coffey had, and I mean, the chemistry that Joe Coffey had with Sergeant Bates, I mean, it was tremendous. They were so funny together, and you know, I just always felt like no matter who was in that show, even if they had a big part or sometimes they were only on a few episodes, those writers made their characters always have like signature episodes or moments that they got everybody involved, and that's what I really love about that show.
Yeah, it was the perfect storm. I mean, we had great writers, great producers, great directors, and the actors. It's like capturing whatever in a bottle. It was you know I look back at that. It was that was it's hard to ever duplicate. That happens to an actor once in his career to be part of something like that good. It was almost actor proof. Everything was so uh, well conceived, well thought of. We had the perfect chemistry with stuff like that. It doesn't really happen that often. When you put together a cast that big, and it was just it kind of was it spoiled me for a lot of the other stuff that I did. I did some really cheesy television movies, during my hiatus. I do Hill Street, and then, I can make a bunch of money by just being in these movies, these women in distress movies where I always played the boyfriend.
Well, if I remember, you were Joey
I
Buttafuoco,
did
correct?
Joey
Yeah,
Buttafuoco. That was fun. That was kind of
yeah,
that
yeah,
was really fun. The only time I ever played somebody that was actually still alive.
yeah,
So that was weird. And yeah, so and those movies were just so cheesy, and the scripts were funky. I mean, I did Policewoman Centerfold.
yeah,
Some of the movies that I did were really kind of cheesy, but I mean, I would almost laugh at some of the stuff. I did when I left Hill Street. I went and did a 6-episode run on uh, what was the show? Not Knots Landing. It was
Oh, Dynasty, maybe? No, not Dynasty.
no. It was about the wine country.
Oh God, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Hold on.
Well, it'll come to me in a second.
Yeah,
But
Falcon
it was
Crest.
Falcon Crest. That's
Yeah,
right. They did
yeah,
6 episodes of Falcon Crest, and that was. I mean, that was a nighttime soap opera. And, after the kind of stuff I got to do on Hill Street Blues, doing that was really kind of, the words would get stuck in my throat. They were so cheesy.
yeah.
But it was fun. I made a lot of money.
Yeah, and Ed, the thing is about Hill Street Blues too is they knew what I loved about it too is the whole 7-year run. I could never figure out what city the show took place in. Now I want to say probably Chicago. Maybe I'm wrong, but you just never really knew, and that was the beauty of Stephen Boschko and his other writers and producers is they always kept you guessing, but they had just tremendous storylines. I mean, I never thought there was a bad episode of Hill Street Blues.
Yeah, they never let you know that it was any town USA, but the opening shots, I think it's Chicago, but they never said Chicago.
Yeah.
You know what? You know what's interesting is that when you do a show like that, okay, and it's that popular, the show was on 7 seasons, okay,
Right.
and as you would expect, the people who created the show and did the first 3 seasons or 4 seasons, okay, inevitably, those writers, because they're on this hit show, they get offers to do their own stuff.
Right.
Okay, they get hired away. They leave, and then you bring in new writers. Okay, new writers who I'm sure feel the pressure of coming onto this show that's like the most honored show in the history of television. And inevitably, the characters become caricatures of the original actors, the original characters. You know, if an actor had this, the character had an idiosyncratic kind of thing
Right.
that was really popular, they try to, they just keep trying to, do that. They don't the characters don't evolve. They sort of stop evolving
Right.
because the new writers are afraid to take these characters in a different direction. They want to keep doing what was popular. And the point I'm making is I think the first 3 or 4 years of Hill Street were great. I think the last 3 were not as great. I think we
Yeah.
all became caricatures of, you know, what we were in the beginning. And then, it was good, but not the first 4 years were brilliant.
Yeah. It definitely was.
But that's going to happen. That happens in every television show that lasts for a while. You have turnover, and the biggest you see it the most when you have turnovers of writers, the writers, because
Yeah.
they're the ones who, our team of writers in the beginning were like, incredible.
Right. And writing is, I've always said this, that an actor's only going to be as good as the writing that's in front of him. And if it's not great writing, it's not going to be as good as it once was. Like you said, one episode though that really stood out to me, Ed, was the Grace Under Pressure episode. That was when they announced that Phil Esterhaus had passed away, and Michael Conrad had passed away a couple months earlier. He had had cancer for like 2 years, and he worked through it, which was remarkable. But I always felt like it wasn't just the characters you guys were playing when you know Frank Farillo makes the announcement. It was actually the actors mourning him as well, because you see that first 3 minutes of just dead silence after he announces it, and you can really see the the pain that you guys were going through losing a castmate like that.
Yeah, I mean that wasn't hard to feel real feelings. When yeah, he was he was a good guy. He was a big part of the show. I mean, yeah, that was sad. It was a sad moment.
Yeah, and I mean, I just that opening right there, Ed, with the roll call every episode. I mean, it was so well done, and item number 7, item number 13. It was just, you felt like it was cops just going to work. Like you were just, it was almost like reality TV in a way, because you felt like the cops were real, people going to work and getting ready to, do their duties as officers. And I mean, just like I said, so many great episodes and so many funny moments as well, which is why I think it was successful, because it wasn't just drama. There was always something that you would see throughout the episode. I think of, God, what's his name? Bruce Witz or White.
Right.
Yeah, his character, Mick Belker, was just hysterical. And you talk about like when you said they never gave the characters chance to evolve. I mean, that was the one character I will say though, they kind of made him a family man after a while. He was still a little crazy, but having a kid and having a wife kind of humbled him a little bit. So I just always like what they did with a lot of the characters. You know, they did some very serious stuff, and that's why it worked so well.
Well, you also you we were innovative in the way we shot it, because if you remember the roll call, and no one was doing this.
Yeah.
We had a handheld camera where the camera guy would be moving and going here, then going there. It would give you a real sense of the room. And, you know, they shot that roll call 3 different ways. You know, they'd have a camera in the very back facing Michael Conrad, and they would film the whole roll call just going back and forth with the camera. Then they would do a close up on Michael. Then they would turn around and do the all of us, and they would have a handheld guy coming down as us reacting to.
Yeah.
And we'd be on the side of doing it, and it gave you a sense of the room, of the feeling. It was messy, and no one had done that in television. Everything was very static, you know.
Right.
But they were the first time we did long moving shots where you bring somebody in, they'd be walking in, the camera would go back, and then they go over here, and then they come back and pick up another guy walking this way. You know, you got this messy, crazy sense of a station house, and that was a huge part of the success. I mean, it made the challenge the viewer, the eyes of the viewer. They weren't used to seeing that stuff, so that was a signature of the show, and what it made it different than everything else had been on before.
Right.
It was different than Charlie's Angels.
Right. Another episode, obviously, Ed, that kind of crushed me as a fan, broke my heart, was Iced Coffee. And let me ask you, I know in season 6, Renee and Barbara's characters had went from main cast to recurring. Were you a victim of another cut, or did you choose to leave the show yourself?
No, I actually chose to leave.
Okay.
I was at a point in my career when I had done basically 6 years on the show. Okay. I was still a young guy, leading man. You know, I took a calculated risk because I knew the show wasn't going to go beyond 7 years. Okay. And I kind of said, I remember thinking, I don't want to be one of 13 actors that are not working when Hill Street ends. I want to get in front of it. So I went to Stephen Bochco. Actually, I went to the head of NBC, named Warren Littlefield, and I met with Warren, and I said, listen, I don't want to, I want to get out of this. And they said, well, would you do, I did 17 episodes
right
that last year. I'll do 17, and then, I want to be out. And, I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to have my own show. I was just ready. I mean, I got everything that I could get out of, 1 more year was not going to change my life. And
yeah.
I actually had a better year financially the year I left. The next year, I did a pilot for another TV series. I did a couple of TV movies. I made a lot of money the year I left, because I was, the day after I left, I was on the Today Show with Katie Couric. They were interviewing me the morning after I got killed. So I was getting some attention, and I was, it was a good thing. I mean, I didn't miss anything. That was sort of a nondescript season. I don't think anybody brought in some new characters, but I wanted to. They did not fire me. I wanted off the show.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, 6 years is a great run as well. I always say if you could get 5 years on a TV series, you're doing something really special, and then anything after that is gravy. So, I
Well,
mean,
if you're an actor, reality is, unless you're Carol Channing in Hello Dolly, there's some point in time where you can't keep playing the same role over and over again.
right.
I mean, that's not. I don't think that's what an actor is all about. You're making money, okay, and everybody wants to make money, but you also want to be stimulated. I mean, in the perfect world, and I've never achieved that. I mean, these guys who go every year, they make one or two movies. They're always playing different roles or it's the same roles, but they're making different movies, one-off type stuff. Playing the same role is kind of boring after a while, and particularly like I said, after the first 4 years, they the stuff that they were writing was sort of not as as exciting as it was in the beginning. You just lose you get a little lazy. When you have a storyline that's based on you can get excited. But the everyday work, it's like a job, and being an actor is not supposed to be like a job. It's supposed to be a little more exciting than that.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, think about this though, Ed. I mean, it really all started for you when you entered Cornell in 1968 or 67, and I mean, here we are in 2023. I mean, you've had a remarkable career, both athletically, as an actor. I mean, everything you could possibly ask for. So I'm sure you look back on your career, as far as the career goes, you really have no complaints, correct?
Why? How could I complain? I mean, there are certain things that I look at where I am right now in my life. I have a great family. I have a great life down here in Charleston, South Carolina. Got great friends. I'm financially stable. My health is good. You could always think, I don't know. I mean, would more roles, would that make me happier today? I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty happy right now, and it's when you can get to that point. And, I would like to continue to work as an actor, but to be honest, it's like the concept of work is a lot more exciting than actually doing it, because it's when you get to be a certain stage in your life, it gets harder to do the jobs you need to do. I don't like being away from home. I don't want to be in a location for, a month, living in a hotel. Yeah, I mean, it's, I would like to do, in a perfect world, I'd like to do something where I work for 3 or 4 days and I'm done, and whatever. But, the irony is that I'm a better actor today than I ever was, But when you get to be my age, there are fewer roles. Number one, there's fewer roles for guys my age, but there are roles out there. I mean, but you just have to. People ask me sometimes, "Are you retired?" And I'll tell them, "I might be, but nobody's thrown a party for me yet."
Yeah.
But I also say actors don't retire. They either can't remember their lines anymore or they die.
Right.
As long as you can, do the work and I still get auditions. I do them on my phone now and I send them to my agent and they send them to whoever's considering me for a role, so, I do them and then I let them go. I don't think about them. And then sometimes I get surprised. They say they want you to do this or that. So, yeah, it's kind of mixed emotions. I mean, I would like to continue to work only because I know I could do it.
Right.
With football, you're done. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
but acting is one of the only good things about being an actor is that you can do it until you die, and not that you're going to work a lot, but you can still do it. And sometimes you'll get something that's fun to do. I don't know if you know about Blue Mountain State, the series I did. It's a comedy about a college football team.
That was
You got to check that out.
yeah.
It was very funny. It was on 3 years on Spike TV, and then
Right.
it was on Netflix for 4 years. After it got canceled, we did a movie.
Right.
It has a cult following among young guys. So it's really interesting to be where I am in my life and have a fan base of like 20-something-year-olds. Because everywhere I go, this show was so popular for college kids. And, I have this fan base of like from football, which are a bunch of old guys, and Hill Street Blues, who are a bunch of old people. And now I have this fan base of, kids 22 to 32 years old.
Yeah.
And it's kind of neat. They recognize me from this role I played, and it couldn't have happened 30 years ago, but with all these streaming networks. I mean, the show was on Netflix for 4 years, so
Right.
it was introduced to a whole new generation every year, and they binge watch. It was like the Animal House, and all these college kids, when they were in college, they watched this show religiously. I mean, you can't believe how I get recognized. If I go, downtown Charleston and all that, kids stop me, want their picture taken with me. I play a great character. And, it was really cool at that stage in my life to get the chance to play a character that resonated with this younger audience. I mean, I did some really racy, crazy stuff. But you should check it out.
And that's the thing about actors too, Ed, is like you said, I mean, football you can't play forever, but you can act, like you said, until you die, and you get this new fan base each time you do something different. So you have the Hill Street Blues fans who are probably, I would say, from ages 45 to around 80, who followed that show and love it. And then obviously you've got this young generation of kids who are in their 20s. So people know who Ed Marinaro is, even though they're only maybe 22, 23 years old, because you could always continue to work and you could always do something that people really, resonate with.
Yeah. I mean, they're nowadays these kids have so many more options and stuff to watch that it's hard to get a hit show that gets the kind of when we, just as an example, if you have a hit show on network television today, if you get 10 million viewers, you're doing good.
Yeah.
When I was doing Hill Street Blues, we were barely in the top 10, and we were getting 25 million viewers.
Yeah.
Okay, but there was only 3 networks. It was before networks. So if you weren't watching Hill Street Blues on 10 o'clock on Thursday night, you only had 2 other options in the local news.
Yeah.
Well, we had a lot of people who would watch our show, but today a hit show, they're getting 8 or 9 million people. So,
and that some aren't even getting that. Some are getting like 5 or 4 million.
I know. So it's it just shows you how things are different, and how they define success for a TV show. I mean, some of these shows I've never even heard of that are popular, and
yeah, it's the new way of the world. I mean, that's the thing too. Nowadays, when a TV show's on a Tuesday night, people may not go and see it till Saturday because they know they could just go on demand, or
right.
They have so many options. And back when Hill Street Blues was on, if you didn't watch it Thursday night, guess what? You didn't see it again until the reruns came.
In the summertime.
So you had to watch. But Ed, first off, this was a lot of fun, and this was a real honor for me. I've always wanted to interview you. I've been a fan forever. And I really do not only congratulate you on a successful and great career, but I really applaud you for everything you've done because, I mean, you've had two different careers and you've made the most of them and you've really hit a home run in both of them. So thank you for giving me a few minutes today. And again, congratulations on a wonderful career.
Thank you, Mike. I enjoyed speaking with you. Good luck to you. You're doing a
I
nice
appreciate
show.
that.
I appreciate the thoughtful questions. You know, sometimes I keep getting asked the same stuff over again, and it gets pretty boring. But I enjoyed this, and good luck to you.
Well, thank you again. And folks, there you have it. Ed Marinaro, I've been a fan of his since the early 1980s. And I'll tell you what, he's had a remarkable career. I mean, look at everything he's done. And it just goes to show, folks, that if you have something you really want to do, don't be afraid to go out there and do it. And don't ever stop dreaming because sometimes dreams don't come true, but a lot of times they do. And Ed Marinaro is proof of that because everything he set out to do, he accomplished. And like I said, he hit a home run. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.